It's being reported that Devon Dampier is supposed to return against Cincinnati, but is he really going to play? And how are the Utah Utes going to do against a good Bearcats team? We're breaking it down on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time joining our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. It's the small details that make the big plays. And just like there's more to every player, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. My name is JT. We're so excited to be joined by Matt Patton, who does a great job covering this Utah team with Ute Nation. And Matt, this Utah team has got a big challenge on their hands with Cincinnati coming to town this weekend. We're going to talk about how players on the offensive side, defensive side are going to fare, predict their numbers, and close on a big commitment for Utah. When I say big, I mean it's an offensive tackle, and you need to replenish the trenches with how much Utah is going to lose. But first, Matt, let's start with the reports that dropped late last night that it is expected that Devon Dampier is going to come back. Matt Zeinert of CBS Sports said Utah star QB Devon Dampier is expected to return to action this week. Pete Thamel said a very similar thing. I want to believe them, and I think that Devon Dampier is going to be the guy. But, Matt, this is Kyle Whittingham. I'm still a little bit like I'm feeling pretty good. I think it'll be Devon Dampier, which bodes well for Utah. The fact that he wasn't ruled out last week is a good sign of how close he was to playing with said emergency QB, right? But I'm still just not going to be like, oh, yeah, Dampier's for sure playing until I see him go out there, because we are dealing with Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah, you got to like the fact that he was available to play in the last game. They said, in an emergency situation, they could bring him in. They obviously felt comfortable with their game plan by having BIRD FICKLIN start. So I wasn't really surprised to see that he's likely going to be back. But also, like you say, just because his name isn't on the availability report doesn't mean that he's 100% playing.
Yeah, it's the classic Whit way. Like, he can get around it by saying that he's not on the injury report. And this is the report from Pete Thamel, said he's on track to be QB1 against Cincinnati. But on track can mean something as simple as he steps wrong in warmups, and then that goes away as well too. So this is interesting to see how it's going to work. For the rest of the injury report, it's going to be interesting to see. We're waiting, Tobias Merriweather, where things stand there. We'll find out. Dallas Vakalaki, and as well as, I'm forgetting the other guy, but Tonga, Semi as well, our favorite tight end. Yeah, ruled out or doubtful off the top of my head. So still some key losses for Utah, but we'll talk about the defense. As I said, we both expect Dampier to play. We'll just, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and tell you Devon Dampier is starting because it's Kyle Whittingham. But even if Devon Dampier plays, I do think he's not going to have like his normal crazy game, Matt, because I don't think he's 100%. That's just how I feel based on all the information has been processed, what happened. I feel like he's easily 80 plus, but he's not 100. So like rushing yards wise, I don't think he's going to go crazy. I think he's only going to have about 40 yards rushing against what I do think is a good Cincinnati defense. I'm going to give him 200 passing yards in this one and actually give him 2 touchdowns through the air in this one. I do not think this is going to be Devon Dampier against West Virginia or Arizona State, but I still think it's going to be a good QB who gives the Utah Utes their best chance to win on Saturday night.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that BIRD FICKLIN proved how athletic he can be in that last game against Colorado, and also how reliable he can be. He had a couple of scares, but it ultimately didn't turn the ball over at all. And I think that he proved that if Dampier is not 100%, I mean, it'd be interesting to know what the coaching staff kind of puts. Is a 90% Dampier as good as 100% FICKLIN, and so. I feel like if Dampier isn't as healthy as they would want him to be, they'd be comfortable putting FICKLIN in for another game.
Yeah, I think they would be too. I am curious. Bird moved the ball well through the air as the game wore on. Utah did meet that fake punt from Orion Phillips to get things going, but I am still skeptic of BIRD FICKLIN, the passer, against what is a legit top 25 team, not a Buffs team that, when it went south in a hurry. So I think we can both agree on this, Matt, regardless of Dampier's health, I would sprinkle in some Bird plays just like you did against a BYU, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think a talent like BIRD FICKLIN, you cannot just leave on the bench. And so I absolutely see, I wouldn't be surprised to see FICKLIN get anywhere from 7 to 10 opportunities out there. he just brings a different element that even though Dampier is a great runner, and I don't know if we've even really seen Dampier at 100% this season, maybe back in that Arizona State game. But you wonder because you know how talented he is. So yeah, I would expect to definitely see a sprinkling at least of BIRD FICKLIN.
Yeah, one thing to know too about the Cincinnati team, they do allow 141 rushing yards on the ground. They have some players I like in their front seven. The Don Corleone, the D tackle, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
Linebackers too, like they got some really nice players there, but still giving up 141 yards on the ground. This is the best rushing attack among all P4 teams. So I still think Utah has success on the ground in this game. Cincinnati's going to try to stop the run, but it's hard to do it with that 6 offensive linemen out there that Utah employs as frequently as they do. I do think Utah has success establishing the run this game. I'm going to take Wayshawn PARKER to continue to surge in this game too, Matt. I like Wayshawn to go over 100 yards again, get a touchdown here too. McQuarrie Rogers chipping in his 30 of his tough yards, but I've just been saying it all year long. Wayshawn is the most talented back on Utah's roster. Feed him the ball. He can break off the explosive runs. He's better at making guys miss. He needs to get the majority of the carries to me, but also give Daniel Bray to make an impact for some of the motion and jet sweep plays that they love to give him to. But I think Utah rushes for over 200 yards here. How do you feel about the Utah rushing attack going against the Bearcats defense?
I think it's going to be fantastic. This is a bend don't break type of a defense. The defense is very middling in most stats, right in the 60s, 70s in the nation, and in most of the stats. But what they do really well is they slow teams down in the red zone, which causes low point totals. So even though they're like number 70 in the nation in rush defense, in scoring defense they're number 28, and in red zone defense they're number 22. So they do a really good job of stopping them when it counts. But the best rush offense they faced this year was UCF, who averages just over 200 yards a game. And I wouldn't put UCF and Utah anywhere near the same level. But UCF was able to get, I think, 191 yards against Cincinnati. But they didn't have many points. I think, they scored 11 in that game. Yeah. So I put Utah, if Utah's averaging 267, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see a 240. But Utah does so well in the red zone. So this is kind of where I wonder if that bend don't break will finally break all the way through, and Utah has a big game.
Yeah, I feel like it is. We like you mentioned the UCF game. They only won that 20-11. So this is a good Cincinnati team. Cincinnati's not a bad team, but being the caliber of a team to go into RICE ECHEL Stadium and win, that's Texas Tech. I am not ready to say that is Cincinnati. One of the best stories in the Big 12, a Big 12 like top 3 team. This is their chance to prove that here. Really good team, but are they one of the elite teams in the conference? You go in and win this game. That's the case. As for the passing game, really quick, I think Ryan Davis, him and Dampier's connection shows up again here. I have him going for about 80 yards and a touchdown. Dallin Bentley doing his thing as well, too. I'm going to have him getting in the end zone. Larry Simmons, I liked what I saw from him last week. He's continuing to get better. Give him about 40 yards, too. Said 40 for Bentley. Buchanan, think around 30 for him. I like the way that Utah just throws the ball up to him, honestly. Just let the freshman go up and get it, which is something you don't say about freshmen, but he's capable of doing it. And Wayshawn PARKER chipping in a little bit, too. Is there a receiver in this game? And just how do you feel that you like, and how do you feel about the Utah passing attack going against the Bearcats secondary? Yeah,
I think, with this defense, they really love to use that 5 linebacker set. Mm-hmm. They do that a lot. I wonder how much they'll change that. But the 3-3-5, 3-5-3, whatever you want to call it. But that doesn't bode well for Utah's outside running game, because then you get those linebackers that are ready for that type of a rush. So, and same thing with the pass. So I see a lot of tight end. So I'm with you on Buchanan. I think they're going to feed him even more as the season goes. Mm-hmm. I could see him even being the top receiver in this game, that they just continually go to him. And then I think they're going to be rushing up the middle quite a bit. If you can get around Corleone, who they call the Godfather, if you can get around him, because he's not really fast, but if you run into him, it's over. He will bring you down. And so I see that Wayshawn PARKER. I love what you're saying about PARKER. And maybe even McQuarrie Rogers starts to get a few more carries, because Bray's been taking some of those carries. But I think in a game like this, with that type of a set that you're going against, you're not going to be doing so many of those sweeps and outside runs that Bray does well. So I think you see a lot more Rogers again. Hopefully a lot more Wayshawn PARKER. Each of them get around 15 carries, and I think that's where you're going to see the bulk of the rushing yards.
It sounds like it's a successful day for Utah if they can do it too. I think they keep Dampier or Ficklin clean in this one. So I like the Utah offense in this one. I think they're going to win their matchup with the Bearcats defense, but can the Utah defense do the same to the Bearcats offense on the other side of the ball? That's what we're talking about in a moment. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Mazda's moving the game forward. For those of you who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the boards. They move crowds, move cultures, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is BIRD FICKLIN's big run in the first quarter, second play of the game against Colorado last week. How about the eruption and ruckus roar in RICE ECHEL Stadium as soon as Ficklin took off and saw nothing but green grass in front of him after he made a couple of Buffalo's defenders miss. So going forward, no matter what matters, that is what Mazda is all about. They keep moving the game forward. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's a move, there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved with Mazda today. Matt, this Utah defense is coming off absolute cinema movie, exceptional, whatever we want to say about it, like against Colorado. Like it was 42-0 at halftime. They had negative 18 yards of offense, the Buffs did. Now, what they will see this week is a lot better. BRANDON SORSBY has been so impressive this season and is a dual threat quarterback, which the Utes have had some struggles with on the season so far. Cincinnati offensive line has held him up. They've only given up 2 sacks on the year. They've been outstanding. And they got some wide receivers. I like the wide receiver core. I don't see a Chase Roberts. I don't see a Tyson, but I see a lot of really good there too. They are down Evan Pryor, their top back, but this is a good offense. I think this is good on good. I think they'll move the ball on Utah, and I think at times, and Utah will stand them up. This to me is very much a stalemate here. I see Utah holding them to 20 points. But I don't think it's going to be like, man, what's wrong with Cincinnati's offense? They haven't done anything in the first half. I think this is going to be a legit back and forth battle.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a very good rushing offense. When the news broke that Pryor was out, I thought that was probably the best thing that could happen for Utah's defense because it's a tough offense. The offensive line does a great job creating good running lanes, and they've got that 3-headed monster. And like you said, Sorsby's a great runner. I was shocked to see he's only just a few yards behind Dampier as being the leading quarterback rusher in the Big 12. So he's had a great year. Some people would even put him in the top 5 quarterbacks in the nation right now with only throwing 1 interception. And that offensive line only giving up a couple of sacks this whole season. They're number 1 in the nation right now in sacks allowed. So you get this defense like Utah's that puts a lot of pressure and brings the heat, and especially in the night games, you got to wonder what that's going to look like, and if this is a game where that offensive line can't hold the defense. But it's going to be interesting to see.
It will. I'm really excited for this one too. And they got a very Tawee Walker is a very talented backup back. We already mentioned Sorsby's legs too. So it's going to be interesting. I do think, as I said, though, it's back and forth, but I think Utah wins a few more than they lose. I think Utah's red zone defense, which has also been pretty good on the year, shows up in some key spots. Also, difference in this game to me is Utah's pass rush. They are 10th in the nation. Sorsby, one of the reasons their offensive numbers so good, they have not played many good defenses on the season. That changed with this Utah defense. John Henry Daly is elite. I think Morgan Scalley, this Utah defense, they're able to dial up some pressure. I do have Sorsby throwing another pick in this one. I actually think it's going to be Elijah Davis. I'm just waiting on Elijah Davis to make a play. Teams just simply don't target him. He's been so good on the season. So I'm going to go Davis to get an interception. But I think the Utah secondary holds up. I think those blitzes still get home. There will be times, especially because Utah's run defense this year has been a little disappointing, whether at linebackers, missing tackles, and safeties as well too, or the defensive tackles. Vaimahi's been really good. Outside of that, and Laia's made some nice plays, but he'll get pushed off the ball at times against the best offensive lines. This is the best offensive line Utah has seen outside of BYU. So this is a big bounce back game for the rushing defense of the Utes. Last time I saw an O-line in a running game of this caliber, LJ Martin, Bear Bachmeyer, several highlight plays on him. This is their chance to step back up. I think they do. I have Jonathan Hall, Lander Barton, and even John Henry Daly all having big days in the front 7 and limiting this Bearcats offense. Do you feel like they're up to the task stopping the run here, Matt?
Yeah. And again, I think a big part of that is Pryor being out. Tawi Walker, he's a bowling ball. I mean, 5'8", he's listed 5'8", 218 pounds. He doesn't have a single rush this season over 22 yards. That's his longest, and that was against the FCS team that they faced. So he's not the guy that they use. He's basically the Nakari Rogers of this offense. So they lost the lightning, in their thunder and lightning by having Pryor out, and so I think that really benefits Utah. The matchup is just so good for Utah, kind of having that slower runner that likes to pound the ball. Utah does really well against that, and so. Yeah, I agree with you. It's going to be a lot about that secondary. I think that Cincinnati's going to try to throw on them as much as they can. And so far, no team's had a lot of success throwing against the Utes.
No, they've held up, but that'll be the interesting thing here is you have lots of guys that can get open, and you're asking your corners to play a lot of man coverage. But as good as Sorsby is, it's the same thing with every quarterback, Matt. You got to get pressure on him. And not even just get pressure, but contain him as well with his legs too. I think when this game is over, we'll say that was the best defensive performance Utah put up on the season. Even if Cincinnati gets to 20, there's a difference between letting a good offense get to 20 and letting some lesser teams get to even 14 in a way, I'd say. So I think we'll look back on this game and be like, man, yeah, Cincinnati got a drive or two out of it that they turned into points, but I think it's going to get 2 touchdowns, and I think there's going to be a few goals in this game out of frustration that they're not going to be able to punch in on this Utah defense. But I think this Utah defense, Morgan Scalley's figured out what works for them, and I'm expecting an outstanding performance Saturday night in RICE ECHEL Stadium. In part 2, Matt, because it's a night game in RICE ECHEL Stadium. You were at the game last week. That atmosphere, how much did it impact the Buffs?
Oh, it was unbelievable. You could tell the crowd had them rattled, and it just there's just something magical about those late night games, and the team had such a chip on their shoulders, and they just looked like they were out to prove something. And I don't see that changing this week because, yeah, they were able to beat Colorado and they proved something, but I think that they want to prove that they can beat a ranked team again this season. And I see them coming firing out on all cylinders just like they did last week.
Yeah, we obviously really like this Utah team. There's a reason they're ranked in the top 25, but at the end of the day, you are 0-2 in your biggest games that you've played. So this is a game, you get College Game Day there. Can't wait for the extra spotlight that the program, the campus gets. But this is a game where let's show up. Tech beat you, but like a BYU game, you outgained them by 100 yards. All the maddening and just frustrating red zone stuff and fourth downs, like that cost you that game. This is your opportunity here where, hey, let's make FanDuel look pretty smart. The spread for this game, 10.5. Like that says a lot about how FanDuel is feeling and likes how this Utah Utes team is rolling. A lot of people in their power ratings, Matt, have Utah above a BYU because of how much more impressive they've been. Utah top 5 in scoring margin at plus 20. So this is a Utah team. They blow out the bad teams. This is a good team. Let's find a way to beat this one this week. And I think they do. As I said, for me, I'm calling it 27-20 Utah Utes. What are your final predictions on this one?
I think it'll be actually even bigger. And again, it's because of that bend, don't break. If you look at their stats, other than their red zone stats and their scoring defense, they're very similar to Colorado's. So the biggest difference that I see between these two defenses is that Cincinnati's been able to keep their opponents out of the end zone. So they've given up those types of yards. And so if they allow that same thing against a team like Utah that does so well on third down conversions, does so well once they're in the red zone, I think this is the kind of game where you see that type of defense break. So I'm actually going to go a lot higher. I think 38-21 Utah. I'm with that spread. That makes sense on these types of night games. They made me a believer last week.
Yeah, I mean, they did. They made me a believer too. I give Cincinnati their credit. But like you said, this Utah team at night, RICE ECHEL Stadium, the way they're playing right now, I could absolutely see Utah covering and doing even more that against this Bearcats team and continuing to put the Big 12 on notice. Like, hey, we slipped up twice, but you do not want us to get in that conference title game. That's what I think the Utah Utes show up and show out in this one. And we're talking about the present for Utah, but the future looking a little bit brighter with the latest Utah football commit. We're going to break down his game for you coming up next. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at DoorDash. DoorDash is here for you because it's almost a weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Utah Utes, I already talked about BIRD FICKLIN earlier. Now I'm going to talk about my guy, Wayshawn PARKER, RB1 of this Utah Utes team, went over 100 yards, had a couple of big runs in this game. He is just a workhorse back there, averaging over 6 yards per carry. He is a ball dominant back that just eats up defenders and forces missed tackles too. I love it when he gets going, and his performance was not a fluke. It was the start of a streak. And just like Wayshawn PARKER delivered for the Utes, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Feel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. This promo ends November 18th. So start your streak up today. Today's show also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps everything exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. How great is it having the NBA back? Yes, the Utah Jazz are in action, but there's so many other great teams too. The Thunder trying to go back-to-back. The Celtics trying to move on with no Jason Tatum this year. Pacers trying to do the same. No Halliburton. How about the new-looking Knicks under head coach Mike Brown? So much happening. Also, NFL, college football, World Series still rolling on. Utah Utes, big favorites. However you're feeling, you can head over to FanDuel right now, where new customers get $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up today and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Matt, the Utah Utes have one of the best offensive lines in college football. Unfortunately, because of that, they could lose all 5 starters next year. So you have a lot to begin replacing and replenishing. And Utah started to do a little bit of that in the recruiting trail. They got a huge commitment from Mataalil, apologize for his last name, but Benjamin. So Benjamin comes over from Lehigh, was committed to Minnesota. Utah executed a flip and brings over the 6'7", 315-pound offensive tackle. He's a 3-star prospect, 12th ranked player in the state, 45th ranked offensive tackle. When you lose 2 guys like FANO and LOMU, not saying he's going to be those guys, but you need to get more room in the tackle area. And I'm glad that you get a local guy like Benjamin coming back to Salt Lake City rather than heading out to play for the Golden Gophers.
Oh, this is a great pickup for them. A great flip. Reading a little bit about what he was talking about, why he chose Utah and left his Minnesota commitment, was that he's already been at several practices, and he's already talking to those 2 great offensive tackles that are likely to be first or second round picks in the NFL draft, taking notes, figuring out what they're doing, seeing what he can do. So he's already getting himself prepared to be a Ute, and he's seen the development that's happened with FANO and LOMU. And so you pair him up with a Kelvin Obot. The future looks bright yet again at tackle for the Utes. And hey, like you said, a 6'7", 315, that makes him the largest in stature recruit that Utah puts in their 2026 class.
Yeah, because how tall is Obot again?
I think he's 6'4", 5. Yeah, 6'5".
Okay, interesting. Yeah, so 6'5" there too. So yeah, like what Benjamin brings to this team, and especially like we talked about too, like not just replenishing the trenches, but also let's continue to keep the really good football players in the state of Utah in the state of Utah. Yes. Losing out on a Celeste Moa, right, going to Tennessee, that hurt. And a lot of these guys too, Matt, this is the first year I felt like I've really noticed, because I used to do some high school football coverage. I know you follow how great the talent in the state is. I'm watching that Utah BYU game, and there's the safety from Bountiful.
Satuala.
Yeah, Satuala making plays. See Alias Sarah, the Timpview linebacker in the middle of the field. Hunter Clegg and Cecilia Kana getting in on there. And I'm like, oh, I remember when we were the ones getting Smith Snowden and Spencer FANO and had Hunter Clegg at one point. Now that's starting to turn a little bit. So if you're Utah, and even a lot of the top guys in this class, Brock Harris, Bot Mulitolo, they're going to BYU. You need to continue to bring in the top guys from your state. Don't let that under the radar guys who aren't the 4-star talent leave your state for other programs. So I'm really glad that Utah brings in a local guy here, Matt, because I do not like how BYU is beating Utah to the punch on some of the local top recruits.
Yeah, those local recruits, they matter quite a bit. And last I looked with BYU, I think they've got 5 of the top 10 in Utah. And that's a big deal, especially because these guys, they go to camps together, they talk. And so usually if you can get 1 or 2 of them, 2 or 3, then they start to come together like BYU's been seeing. And so you get a guy like Benjamin, who's down in Utah County, that always helps. And what it could do is help either more from the 2026 class or from the 27 class. You know, you have a guy now that is speaking about Utah rather than BYU to these other players that they're seeing at camps. And that's a big deal. That's where that really helps.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with you there. And, just going back to the offensive line, it is so important for Utah to continue to replenish the offensive line spots. Jim Harding's a great coach. I have no doubt that Utah will have a good offensive line next season. But all 5 starters potentially leaving, whoa, that's a lot if you lose that. And whether it's like right now, I look at this group and I'm like, all right, Garcia's been sitting on the bench a little bit. That's a really good 4-star offensive lineman. Yes, he hasn't played his freshman or sophomore year now, but he's behind 2 first-round picks. I expect him to step in, and honestly, I think he'll be Utah's best offensive lineman next year. I've liked what I've seen limited time from Alex Olson as well. I think that's an interior offensive lineman for Utah that can do some things. You have the transfer from USC. I'm blanking on his name right now, but I expect him to be one of the tackles for this team next year too. And then on the inside, right, like who's going to earn some of those spots? I actually think Obot might be more likely for the inside. I know he's a 4-star. It's tough to do what Spencer Fano did starting as a true freshman. It's more likely to do the Caleb Lomu, your red shirt, have to get your strength up, and then you boom onto the scene as sophomore. So I just don't love throwing a lot on freshmen's plates, but those are 4 guys that I think could be on this Utah offensive line next year, Matt. How are you feeling about the future of the O block? Because the present is bright as can be, but the future, a little more mysterious and cloudy.
Well, if all 5 starters from this season end up declaring for the NFL, this is again where the transfer portal comes in. Some of these freshmen will be able to step up. You mentioned a couple of names that I've already kind of slotted in as I'm looking at 2026 with Garcia and Olson. I think that those are a couple of guys that are likely to fill in some of those holes. But it's just that's the era we live in now. I think that Utah would likely, if you lose 5 starters, you got to pull some other guys from other teams and use that transfer portal. So I like a lot of these guys that they're bringing in, but the ideal situation would be to bring in a couple of guys that have starts at other schools, plug them in, and give these guys the development time that they need to be successful. You don't want to rush somebody in. We already saw that. I know it's a totally different situation with like an Isaac Wilson compared to an offensive lineman, but if you can give them that time to develop and then come in and build their confidence because they do well, it makes a big difference. So I'm not too worried about it, just because any smart player in college football knows how well linemen get developed at the University of Utah. And so I think that they'll be able to bring some guys in at the portal if they need to. I mean, you saw on the defensive line, they really didn't make that a priority, and the defensive line's been fine.
Yeah, they have been fine. The only thing I would say, I was actually going to bring up a point about the defensive line, is in your biggest game, you really wish you had that hulking defensive tackle who could stop the run at a little bit higher of a rate. I feel like that's an area Utah should have gone after, a veteran D tackle. Utah has really yet to go after a veteran offensive tackle or offensive lineman with a lot of starts under his belt. I totally agree with you, Matt. That's what this team needs to do. Will they do that? Will they think they have the answers in-house? It'll be interesting to see, because the trenches just have not been a transfer portal area for the Utah Utes yet. But thankfully, we don't have to focus on the transfer portal, because we got a really dang good football team right now, and they're facing off against Cincinnati. College game day is in town. Make sure you guys get up, get there early, create one of the best atmospheres they've had on the season. Feels like we showed up for Big Noon. Let's show out for College game day, which will draw an even bigger audience with the year that they are having. And then, as always, let's enjoy one heck of a night in RICE ECHEL Stadium. I'll be going live after the game, so make sure you guys keep it at Locked On Utes for that as well. Matt, thank you so much for hopping on the show, my friend. Please let everyone know where they can find you at.
Yeah, go to utenation.com.
Yeah, make sure you guys head over to Ute Nation as well, and give Matt a follow on X too, where he does a great job listing out all the stats you need leading into this game. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well, my friend. That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. Make sure you guys check out our Locked On Big 12 Squad show. I had a fun back and forth with our good old buddy Drake Toll there too. So make sure you guys check out that. And coming up, as I said, after the game, as soon as the final whistle blows, head over to Locked On Utes. Our post-game show will be rolling on Utah versus Buffs Utah versus Bearcats. I hope it's a similar result to the one they had against the Buffs. We'll find out after the game Saturday. Enjoy it, everyone. College game day and the Utah Utes versus Cincinnati. It's almost here.